Pablo Picasso is probably the most famous painter who ever lived. And in 1901, when he was 19 and completely unknown, he painted this: a woman taking a bath. That's the whole picture. A woman bent over a small tin tub in a blue room, a bed behind her, posters on the wall. It's not big, roughly 50 by 60 centimeters, and it hangs today in the Phillips collection in Washington, where it's the kind of Picasso people walk past on their way to the famous ones. But the people who look after this painting have known for a very long time that something about it is wrong. It goes back to 1954, when a conservator at the museum examined the surface and wrote a letter about it, because the brushwork didn't make sense. There are strokes under the blue running against the composition, ridges of dried paint that don't correspond to anything visible. The texture of this painting is describing a different picture than the one on it. It took 60 years, an X-ray machine, an infrared camera, and 4 American institutions to find out what that picture was, and to understand why Picasso hid it and then never mentioned it once for the rest of his very long life. You need to know what happened to him in 1901. The painting is called The Blue Room. The Phillips bought it in 1927, the museum's first ever Picasso, and it's one of the earliest works of his blue period. The room in it is real, by the way. That's Picasso's actual apartment, 130 Boulevard de Clichy, Montmartre, top floor. 2 small rooms, and you're looking at most of his life in there, because that one room was his studio, his bedroom, and evidently also his bathroom. The poster above the bed is May Milton by Toulouse-Lautrec, a painter Picasso idolized. Lautrec had died that September, a few weeks before this was painted, so the poster is a quiet little tribute from a 19-year-old nobody to his hero. The apartment itself, though, has a much darker story. It starts a year earlier, October 1900. Picasso arrives in Paris for the first time for the World's Fair, where one of his canvases is hanging in the Spanish section. He barely speaks French, and he shares everything with his best friend, a Catalan painter and poet named Carles Casagemas. Paris goes well for Picasso. For Casagemas, it's a catastrophe. He falls in love with a model named Germaine, who wants nothing to do with him. And he starts drinking heavily and talking about death. On the 17th of February 1901, Casagemas invites his friends to a farewell dinner at a café on the Boulevard de Clichy. At the end of the meal, a shocking tragedy strikes the group. Germaine survives the chaos, but Casagemas does not. He was 20. Picasso wasn't there. He was in Spain when it happened. And what he did a few months later is, to me, one of the strangest decisions of his whole life. He went back to Paris and moved into Casagemas's apartment. Same rooms, same bed, a few doors down from the cafe where his best friend died. He even started an affair with Germaine. That apartment is the Blue Room. For a little while, 1901 still looks like it might be Picasso's year. In June, the dealer Ambroise Vollard gives him his first Paris exhibition. 65 works, most of them loud and colourful, a genuinely big debut for a teenager. Then, over the following months, the colour drains out of his work. He paints Casagemas dead in his coffin, lit by a candle. After that, nearly everything he makes is blue, and nearly all of it is about misery. Beggars, prisoners, the sick. Museums fight over these canvases now. In 1901, nobody wanted them. Even Vollard didn't buy a single blue period painting until 1906. So Picasso got poor, genuinely poor, sometimes too poor to buy canvas, which is why some of his work from these years is painted on cardboard. And when he had a new idea and nothing to paint it on, he did the obvious thing. He painted over something he'd already finished. This wasn't a one-off, it was a habit. There's a woman's face underneath the old guitarist. There's a man with a moustache underneath woman ironing. Museums keep finding these things. Which brings us back to the Blue Room. Sometime late in 1901, in the dead man's apartment, Picasso took a canvas he'd already used, turned it sideways, and painted the bathing woman over whatever was on it. Then he moved on. For half a century, nothing. Then the 1954 letter. Then 40 more years of nothing. Because the suspicion existed, but the technology didn't. In the 1990s, the painting was loaned to the National Gallery of Art, and while it was there, somebody finally X-rayed it. The X-ray showed a blurry shape under the surface, so now they knew something was there. That was the limit of what an X-ray could do, though. It couldn't say what the something was. They couldn't even be sure it was a figure. In 2008, conservators at the Phillips tried again with an infrared camera and a special filter, light that slips through the upper layers of paint. This time, the shape had edges. And what showed up on that screen set off years of work involving the Phillips, the National Gallery, Cornell University, and the Winterthur Museum in Delaware. Scan after scan, X-ray fluorescence mapping at Cornell in 2012, all of it pieced together by a conservator named Patricia Favero, into the sharpest image anyone had ever produced of the thing under the paint. In June 2014, they went public with it. If you turn the Blue Room 90 degrees onto its side, there is a man underneath it. A finished portrait, not a sketch. A bearded man in a jacket and a bow tie, cheek resting on his hand, 3 rings on his fingers, looking straight out at you. He's dressed up. He's posing. The analysis says Picasso painted him just before the Blue Room, that same year, and then buried him under it. So, the obvious question, the one the Phillips team asked the second his face appeared, and the one they're still asking 12 years later. Who is this? It isn't Picasso. That was ruled out immediately. A lot of people assume it's Vollard, the dealer who gave him the show, but there's no letter, no note, nothing written anywhere, so it's a guess. Others have suggested the Spanish writer Pío Baroja, also a guess. This is Montmartre in 1901. Picasso was 19 and kept no records, and whoever sat for this portrait, that information probably died with the people who were in the room. Picasso lived another 72 years. He became the most documented artist in history. And as far as anyone has found, he never said one word about the man under the Blue Room.